Hi, my name is Sean Stark. I am the founder of PSP or Combat Silat, which is how it translates. I wanted to get on here and talk to you quickly about one of the things about PSP that I wanted to do early on is identify attributes that people should develop in order to be better at A, being adaptable, and B, just generally being more capable of fighting. Now, some of those attributes are obvious. I mean, speed, being non telegraphic, learning how to basically move well, fluidly, quickly, with balance and all that stuff. So, those kinds of physical attributes are a huge thing. But I also wanted to develop some of the sort of mental emotional attributes. So, how you might think of it is like um, some of the guys who've trained with me, know like we uh, have trained on concrete. Generally, most of them have almost exclusively trained on concrete outside in the heat. And by doing that, one of the things that I noticed is I transported myself from, I relocated from living in the north, central Wisconsin area to central Florida area. And some of the things that I was doing were relatively successful in Wisconsin, but when I got to Florida, they no longer worked. Now, why would that be the case? Well, when you add sweat and different climate, humidity, and all that jazz to the mix, some of my grabbing methods, which I had developed in Wisconsin, which were great in Wisconsin, um, didn't hold up. They just didn't hold up. So, this is where you can see if you're kind of a martial arts buff, you could kind of take that very small thing that I identified from, just moving across the country. The environmental change there caused me to have to rethink how I did certain things, and that is really interesting when you think hopologic. As far as like every martial art um, in the world and how they've come to be what they are. Environment does play a role. The intended outcome does play a role. If it's a sport, it's going to develop a certain way. If it's considered to be a martial art, it's going to develop a certain way. Likewise, if it's a business, it's going to develop a certain way, and it's not going to be the same. A lot of these, a lot of martial arts schools are around right now, I think, have sort of, to be direct, they've deteriorated, degraded, destroyed what the martial arts were about. And, there's, you could argue the value of that, if little Johnny, some 7-year-old, is a black belt in some martial art, did they benefit from that in a way that's going to, change their trajectory throughout their life? Is it worth it? Is it good? Obviously, there's value in that. So I think that it's an interesting paradigm, but it is a paradigm, and it does impact martial value. So I just think it's interesting to note those things because we see so many just ridiculous things in the martial arts right now. Like some of the stuff I see taught as being of value, or teaching somebody self-defense, and they're using rattan sticks or something, to teach weapons, or it's like that is a completely different thing. Like I understand the basic premise. You're building the skills and the attributes, but you're not really developing the skills if that's not the tool you're going to use. And if you are building attributes, I would think we'd have to discuss what the attributes you think you're developing are versus what you would need if, for example, you had to switch a tool from, a collie stick to a backpack, just because that's what you had on hand, or your phone, because that's what you had. How are you going to do 90% of what you do with a stick? And does that other 90% even really matter in the scheme of things if you're never going to have your stick with you? Now, if you're just doing it for sport or history or culture or all of those things or whatever, that's all good. Now, I'm not having a problem with them happening. What I have a problem with, and it's not even really a problem, and if you're looking at them from a strictly application-based perspective, and you're expecting that what you're learning with a stick is going to apply in, self-defense, then I kind of struggle with that, because you will have to carry something around like a stick or a cane or something that you can modify, and then you have to understand the thing that you're modifying to work. Anyway, so it's important for us, I think, as martial artists to really understand what we're trying to accomplish, what the goals of the systems we study are, and how they're being impacted by the outcomes or perspectives, I guess. I'm not really sure how to say that, but if it's a sport or if it's a business or if it's whatever their central theme is, that even if it's jujitsu, sure, jujitsu is great for self-defense when it's used for self-defense, but when it's always trained in the sport context, it's been proven that that's not exactly true. Yes, it can have value for sure. I mean, just learning basics of a punch, for example, has value in self-defense, guaranteed. How much value if you've never moved your feet, or if you don't know how to block, or all these other things, or if you assume you're always going to be the victor because that's how your school is set up. So you're taught some technique, and then everybody volunteers to let you succeed with your technique when you're training. Those are all paradigms that will definitely impact your ability to actually do self-defense. Now, they won't impact your ability to do sport necessarily, or art, or thinking of it as a after-school activity or whatever. So, this is just some of the thoughts that, PSP, I can tell you, I specifically tried to stay focused on efficacy. Now, there are still some things that are not strictly about fighting. Obviously, the way I name things, the way that, the outfits and whatever, all that stuff, that's more to pay homage to the cultures that it came from. I don't actually dress like that too much anymore. If you've been to one of my seminars, you've probably seen me in jeans, or shorts if it's really hot or something, but in a t-shirt, and often in shoes, because I think if you can't apply what you're doing with those kinds of from my perspective for PSP, if you can't apply what we're doing with those sort of standard everyday things, clothing items, then you're limiting yourself. And if you can't apply it in a parking lot, then obviously what you're doing is limited. And if you can't apply it in a bathroom stall, then what you're doing is limited. And if you can't apply it in a busy bar or something, this is kind of my mindset. And then with it, I brought culture, and the intent was for myself, again, I didn't build PSP for anybody else, really. I built it because I was interested in it, and I had studied a lot of different things, and I wanted to bring them together, and I wanted to get rid of shit that I didn't think was necessary, and or that was just completely asinine, and work through what the intent was. And for me, it was to have a little bit of cultural growth, was to experience the Southeast Asian cultures. It was to develop my skills as a martial artist, as a father, as a human, and to sort of have a little bit of that. I do believe that there's some value in having some of the philosophical aspects of martial arts, because if your only relationship to the world is being able to conquer it, then the only thing you can do is try to conquer it. So there's value to me in having some of the other side of it, which is personal development and all that stuff. So even physical, just, are you getting healthier? Some of the things we do probably are more focused on general health, strength, cardiovascular ability, balance, on and on. So those are all kind of more my scheme, right? Like, could it be adapted to sport? Probably pretty easily. Could it be adapted to some other context? I don't know, strictly artistic? Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we still have jurus. For the most part, I don't look at as being particularly artistic, although you could see them that way. They are more, in our case, how they are intended is to be sort of like a dictionary of hints. Hints to the things that you can do. So, they don't even necessarily represent, direct to action type of movements. They are hints to direct types of movements. You have to do the actual training. If you learn just the jurus, you're not going to be able to fight worth a shit, because you're not going to have any skills whatsoever. So the whole thing with the jurus is to be a container for all of the skills you're practicing. And so you get these sort of as you're moving through a jurus, you can change the emphasis, you could change the speed, you can change the footwork, you could change strikes, you can change kicks somewhat, all depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then you can slow them down, speed them up, etc. So if you wanted to, for example, use them more for cardio, you could do that. If you wanted to use them more for like some sort of Tai Chi like art movement, you could do that. Artistic expression has value, in my opinion. Now, not for fighting, not for fighting, but it has value personally to me. So that's kind of where PSP is at. There's a lot of things covered in this video. The purpose of PSP was to functionally build attributes that could help somebody defend themselves, functionally build at least a awareness of philosophical ideas and principles, and to push personal development, and then also to physical health, fitness, etc. To me, all of those kind of work hand in hand. If you talk to somebody who's, a huge fitness guru, eventually they're going to have some personal development stuff that happens, because if you're in anything long enough and there are days you wake up that you don't want to go and you don't want to train and you don't want to do something, or it's hard, or you're struggling, you're going to develop as a human. When you're challenged to do things that you're not particularly good at, you're going to develop as a human. So to me, those are all the things that are really the primary focus of PSP, Combat Silat. And I hope this was interesting and useful. If you like it, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and be looking for more of the videos content to be posted. I have hundreds of videos, so most of them have been unlisted for 10 years, so 8 to 10 years probably, I don't know, a long time. So I'm releasing them and I want to give you context for them, and that's what I'm doing here.